What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of NFL Turf Talk. We are live here on the DSM Media Twitter channel at DSM_media is where you can find us. Smash that follow button and then check out the link tree in our bio. It will take you directly to every other social media platform we're on, more specifically the YouTube channel where you can find the NFL Turf Talk YouTube channel that we are also streaming to you guys live from. And that one is the best and only spot to get your thoughts, comments, and questions pulled up here with us and be interactive throughout each and every one of our live streams. So make sure to smash that subscribe button, like the video, share it with your friends, family, any other football fans that you know that might be interested. I'm one half of your host, Dylan Davis. To my left today, my faithful co-host, Scotty. No internet connections to start the day. Bad slate, shitty weather, but we're going to have a day regardless, my man. Happy Sunday. Week 17 is already underway.
Ah, man. And what that ultimately means is that the season is winding down, obviously. We're into the second to last week of the season, but also means fantasy playoffs, fantasy seasons are ending, most likely, unless you're playing championships in the final week of the season, which I don't know if I would recommend
I don't
that.
think people like to do that.
Yeah, most likely your seasons are ending in that regard today. Tomorrow as well, but yeah, man, it's been a fun season. I've been like talking to some of my friends on the side here just about like some overall holistic views of the season so far. Let me ask you this, just a general question. Do you feel like there were more injuries this year, or do you feel like the star players kind of fared pretty well? Like how do you view that? Just like honest feel after like thinking back through the season, obviously
without going back and like comparing it, it does feel like there was a lot. And there was, I think very early on in this year, in this season, we were talking about just how many quarterbacks were being brutalized and injured early on in the season.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and especially when you look at some teams that you expected to contend that were contending last year, hell, that we were in a Super Bowl last year. You look at San Francisco 49ers, they're beat up. You have a number one potential seed in the NFC in the Detroit Lions. The one thing that people seem to think might hold them back is their injuries. So you do look around like that. But then, like you said, the star players this season, again, maybe it's just short-term memory for me. But this season does feel like the stars are shining. Like there's some almost historic stuff going on, right? Like you have Derrick Henry has how many rushing yards? Over 1,700, 18, like close to 1,800 rushing yards at this point.
Saquon. Like,
and he doesn't lead,
but he's
and he doesn't lead the league.
Right.
Like
and Josh Jacobs is like right there after.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Like those are just the running backs. You have a running back in Saquon who's like 260, 270 yards away from breaking Eric Dickerson's all-time record. You have what Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are doing. You have guys like Joe Burrow, even though the records might not indicate it. However, that Cincinnati Bengals team we're going to talk about in a few minutes, man. But the record might not indicate it, but he's putting up all-star MVP type of numbers, right? So it's definitely been an odd season. Another thing I would throw out to you, man, there are, again, I'd have to go back and maybe it's just I'm not paying enough attention to my football history and knowledge. There's a lot of like 11, 12, what could be like 13, 14 win teams this year come at the end of the season. I know we talked about how the AFC is, maybe they're fraudulent. Maybe there's that. There's going to be like 5 of the 7 teams that are 11, 12, 13 win teams, if not a little higher, like the Chiefs and Bills.
Yeah, it's a little top heavy to your point, with both conferences, quite honestly. And I think the surprise is probably in the NFC with how many double digit win teams there are. Teams like the Vikings, right? And I mean that whole division outside of the Bears, right? They're all in double digits already and could get far past it by the end of this season. Obviously you have the Eagles, and then I think the Commanders with a rookie quarterback, Jaden Daniels, playing the way he's played. They're a little bit of a surprise as well. And then I mean you could end up with the Bucks or the Falcons, right? One of those teams could end up with double-digit wins as well in the NFC South, as bad as that division has been. So it is interesting to see how it plays out. But maybe that last wild card spot has just made things a little bit more competitive. That last week of the season as well, right? I don't know. It's interesting.
And
It makes
and
things
just how
interesting.
funny it is kind of funny though how deep the NFC is, like you were talking about, and how that last wild card, whoever it may be, could be a threat or potentially a team you don't want to see. There is a world in which the Green Bay Packers are the number 7 seed. I think if Washington wins out and Green Bay loses today, which could very well happen,
Good.
there is a world where they lose the tiebreaker to Washington, I believe, and are the number
Interesting.
7 seed, which if you're an Eagles fan, I think we agree we'd much rather play Jaden Daniels in the Washington Commanders.
Yeah.
It's just ironic because I don't believe that newly introduced 7 seed has won a playoff game. Am I correct? Like that's been a big storyline. Like we're all so happy to get the extra team in each spot, and I think of all 7 wild cards, like we were the first,
Been
right? A
2
couple years
years?
ago in Tampa Bay. It's been like 3 years, I think.
3.
Um,
3 years.
like I think they've all gotten relatively smacked come
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the
first round.
AFC because the AFC gets all jumbled up. But I feel like you're correct there. Martian Lynch says, "Do you think the Falcons beat the Commanders tonight?"
Well,
So
we need it. Well, not need it, but it would be nice because for a few reasons. I saw shout out to Mark Henry because he pointed this out. He's the one that pointed out the tiebreaker between Green Bay and Washington potentially. So
Washington,
not only would
yeah,
it help for that, but also an Atlanta win, I believe, would solidify them winning the division. And would keep Tampa Bay out of the playoffs, which again, if you're the number 2 potential number 1 seed Philadelphia Eagles, we're all very, very, very high on with Super Bowl aspirations. You're not scared of anybody, but there are teams, if I can help myself by rooting for the
yeah,
Falcons tonight. So Michael
yeah,
Penix, excuse me, not Kirk Cousins, is in the postseason instead of Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans. I'm going to do so. So
yeah,
that's another thing to keep an eye out for. And like you said, I'd much rather play Washington. So Washington loses tonight. It doesn't solidify them as the 7th seed because there's, Seattle still hanging around, and there's a way that Washington gets knocked out if they lose out. I don't see that happening. So a loss tonight would almost guarantee an Eagles Commanders first round
playoff matchup,
battle.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be ultimately ideal. I'll be honest with you, I don't have a ton of confidence in the Falcons beating the Commanders tonight. It's in DC. I don't think the Falcons are that good, quite honestly. So we'll see. We'll see. It's a prove-it spot for the Falcons, right? To get into the postseason. Maybe they
Yep.
can be different with Michael Penix Jr. Maybe they just look like a different unit with him and Bijan back there in the backfield. So we'll see, man. The Commanders aren't unbeatable in this world, right? They just beat the
Yeah.
Eagles. Everybody's really high on them right now. Jaden Daniels has had a fantastic season, but let's see what the Falcons got with Michael Penix Jr. back there. See what it looks like.
Yeah. Before we get into today's slate, which is an ugly, ugly mess, outside of that Green Bay Minnesota matchup, we're going to talk a little bit about. We can throw in there the Atlanta Washington because it does have some severe playoff implications. Outside of that, these games stink. Even when we get into the pregame show in about an hour for the Eagles Cowboys, we're talking Cooper Rush and Kenny Pickett battling in some rainy weather in South Philly today. So these games are
Yeah.
nothing to get too excited about, man. But we already talked about the Christmas Day games that helped kick off Week 17. There were 3 more in action yesterday. Justin Herbert and the Chargers take it to Drake May, who ends up getting injured in yesterday's ball game, and they drop 40 on Gerard Mayo's defense and continue to push towards the postseason. Meanwhile, the Denver Broncos and Bo Nix lose their 2nd straight against teams they're fighting to keep out of the postseason and beat out against. And Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals score late to win the game and keep their postseason hopes alive, potentially heading into Week 18. I'm not exactly sure what else they need to occur. All I know is like 3 weeks ago, it was like the Bengals. Like it
The
was like
Bengals.
an outlandish scenario like 3 weeks ago how they could sneak into the postseason, and we're about a week away from it potentially happening with what's going on right now between Denver and them.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, I mean, the biggest thing is Denver having to lose against Kansas City. They host Kansas City next week. I believe it's Kansas City going to Denver. Kansas City obviously not going to play their starters given their situation. So the Broncos would have to ultimately, that's the biggest factor. They would have to lose next week against
Yeah.
Kansas City's backups. And
Right.
then probably something along the lines of Indianapolis having to lose one of their next two, and then maybe the Dolphins having to lose one of their next two. Maybe the Bengals have the tiebreaker over those two teams. I'm not sure exactly
Right.
there,
Right.
but
Right.
I think that's the scenario. Those three teams, the Dolphins, the Colts, and the Bengals, need the Broncos to lose again next week. So
So
we'll
what I
see.
have here is the Colts have the tiebreaker over Miami based on head-to-head win percentage. Has nothing to do with Cincinnati at the moment. So maybe it is just Miami. I think it's one of the two they would need to lose one of their last two. Bengals win next week, Broncos lose next week, and I think that could ultimately be the route that they get into. And the
Yeah,
reason I bring them up first and foremost to really start today's show, man, is we're sitting here talking about 7 seeds.
yeah,
If you're Josh Allen and the Bills and you have this MVP season and you get the number 2 seed, they getting put on upset alert. I know we're jumping. I'm 2 weeks away. I'm jumping ahead of myself. But is that dude and Jamar Chase and the Triple Crown type of season he's having, is that the team you want walking into your crib with their postseason and his postseason success versus yours, compared to what you could have right now in a potential Bo Nix matchup? Obviously.
right. Yeah, definitely would want Bo Nix and the Broncos over the Bengals. But I will say this. I'm not sure. Let me put it this way. The Bengals could lose to every single team in the postseason with the defense that they present.
Yep.
They can't stop anyone. So Buffalo and that offense, I don't think that the Bengals are stopping Josh Allen. I don't think that they're stopping James Cook. I think that they would have a field day against that Bengals defense. And it could end up a shootout, of course. And if it does, obviously the Bengals have firepower. I have a feeling Buffalo at home would be able to get enough stops against the Bengals, but Joe Burrow, he is the outlier, man. And obviously on the other end, it's Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. Who would play better in the matchup ultimately to guide their team to success? So yeah, it would make for the headlines. They would definitely have to be on upset alert. I'm not taking it that far to say the Bengals couldn't win in Buffalo. But I would probably lean the Bills in that one, just with the way Josh Allen has played. If Bo Nix can go drive down the field and in like under a minute and get a touchdown against that horrid defense, then I think Josh Allen would give them nightmares. But on the other end, man, you look at T. Higgins, you look at Jamar Chase,
and I'm looking
down
at
day
what
for Jamar
Buffalo's
Chase.
defense has lacked.
Yeah, they've been in shootouts, so it could happen. I was just gonna. I wanted to ask you that about the Bengals, man, because it is just it's almost a travesty what we're like witnessing with this team. You look at Joe Burrow, man. Like we talk about MVP and records and like what matters, and like if they get into the playoffs, like should he not be considered for MVP? He's first in passing yards. He's first in passing touchdowns. 8 interceptions to 42 passing touchdowns. 70% completion percentage. He's fifth in the NFL in that.
Christ.
Dude, 202 rushing yards, 4.9 yards per carry, 2 rushing touchdowns this year. He's using his legs a little bit. He has a horrible defense on the other side of him.
I mean,
and then my other question to you, bro, on the other side of it, because most likely they won't make the playoffs. I'm just going to put that out there. I think Denver will win next week at home. But wasting Jamar Chase and T. Higgins.
Yeah, bro.
And what they should have just extended these guys 2 years back, man. Like, get ahead of this. You'll be lucky if you can afford Jamar Chase this offseason. There's no way in hell you're affording T. Higgins, who just had 3 touchdowns yesterday and over 130 yards on 10 plus receptions. Like they have fumbled the bag so hard with this unit.
They have.
Man.
They have. So and yet they are finding a way to keep themselves alive. And just to bounce off of your point when it comes to Joe Burrow, if they are able to get into the playoffs after starting 0-3 and then 1-4 on the season, they would obviously have to win next week. That would mean they're on a 5-game winning streak heading into the final week or heading into the postseason. Excuse me. And they have, brother, they have 4 losses this year where they have scored 33 plus points.
Yeah. That offense.
4
Yeah.
losses where they have scored 33 plus points. They have a loss with 38 against the Ravens. They have a loss with 38 against the Steelers, which are both divisional rivals for them, both
Yeah.
in Cincinnati. That defense, you are right. It is a disaster. I just don't know that they present a matchup. Not obviously they're not a matchup that you want, but when I'm looking at the Bills specifically, and that's why I brought them up because it would align that way as of right now if the Bengals sneak in. And I'm looking at that Bills defense, and I'm going, yeah,
Yeah.
they might score 40 against the Bengals. Joe Burrow might score 45, and that, I don't know stylistically that the Bills want that problem come postseason, come that first round
Yeah.
matchup. Excuse me.
Yeah.
He should without a doubt be in the MVP conversation. The fact that he's not is kind of truly disgusting, right? Because we call it all the time a team sport, but
Yeah.
it's a quarterback award. But like I just said to you, like, what are you going to tell if they win next week and they finish 9-8? I just told you they lost 4 games where he's put up 33 plus points. What in the fuck does that have to do with Joe Burrow? Should he have scored 45 against the Ravens?
Yeah.
Should he have scored 50 against the Steelers? Like, what
Not
does
yet.
that
He
have
should
to do
have.
with
But
this?
yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. It's interesting, man. It's so interesting compared to other sports where you have this massive amount of games where teams can rack up wins. Maybe the records don't get that far sparse. And like, does it really impact the award as much as it does in the NFL, where basically Lamar is like an outlier right now with the amount of losses that he has on the season to some people.
Yeah.
So imagine what they think of Joe Burrow,
Yeah.
even despite his numbers, man. Because Lamar is putting up close to numbers, and I think that's the argument there is that Lamar's right there with him as far as production. So if he has more wins than Josh, then or not Josh, excuse me, Joe Burrow, but he has Derrick Henry. But I mean, Joe Burrow has Jamar Chase. To be fair, the Triple Crown, so that's not an excuse. So I guess when you look at it, like when I talk myself through it, I guess I would go with Lamar over Joe, but it is he should be in the combo, basically, is what I want to say. He should be in there with Josh Allen, with Lamar Jackson. They just
I
have more
mean,
wins, man. And I guess
Scotty, bro.
I don't know.
Scotty.
I'm
Oh,
confused.
and I'm really we're talking about this now, and we're probably late to the party. I know we've mentioned Joe Burrow's name before, but the record
Yeah.
was just too bad at that point. I mean, if we're talking him and Josh Allen, brother, it's not fucking close. And Josh is going to win it.
Yeah.
Josh Allen's going to win league MVP. Josh Allen has over 1,000 less passing yards than Joe Burrow right now. He has 16 less passing touchdowns and almost a 6% completion percentage disparity between the two of them. I mean, and I know Josh has the rushing advantage, and he has numerous games with multiple rushing touchdowns, so they're more close in that regard. But 3,500 passing yards, 26 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. That's through the air. And you read off Joe Burrow's numbers: 46, 41 passing, 42 touchdowns, 8 interceptions with a 70% completion percentage. So what? Because they might finish 2 or 3 games separate in the records, that gives you the MVP?
I guess.
I mean, I'm sorry. That's a little asinine to me.
I agree. I guess just based off of history, right? I guess that's the way it works. But I mean, Joe Burrow has been the best player in football this year. Like, is that unfair to say? Like,
yeah, and if we're being honest, is he even going to win the Offensive Player of the Year award?
probably not. Jamar Chase. They're saying Jamar Chase has a better chance at it than
Jamar
him.
Chase, Derrick Henry, Lamar, like all these guys are probably going to beat him out. But like,
excuse me, talking about it, NFC and AFC.
Yeah. But like,
yeah,
I don't know, dude. I don't know.
Maybe you give it to him as like a consolation prize. But then it's once again, it's like Lamar. What about Lamar?
Right. basically 4,000 passing yards, 39 passing touchdowns, 4 picks, 68% completion percentage, and over 121 passer rating. I'm
4
sorry,
picks.
bro. Like,
There's no rushing stats there either, right?
right? No, there's not.
Yeah. Lamar suffers from voters fatigue, though. He's just always in the conversation. He's won it twice
Right,
already.
which is such bullshit because I'm pretty sure this is like his best statistical year as well.
It is. Yeah.
And this isn't like the same as like Jokic and the NBA with voters fatigue because people want like this would be like in reverse with voters fatigue. Like Josh Allen is Jokic and Embiid is Lamar, right? Like they're looking in like with Jokic, they were looking in depth at Raptor Plus and all the calculator fucking stats where Embiid's got the points per game, the shooting percentage, the everything, the less help around, like all this
Jokic
shit.
makes his teammates better. He has lesser teammates, so he's the more value. Yeah, it's the exact argument. Yeah, it's fair because Josh Allen, the basis of his argument for MVP is simply that he does not have anything around him compared to these other guys in the AFC. So,
what's he getting fined for?
Hey, the Sixers are back. Had to. They won me some money last night, man.
I was going to say something outlandish. I probably shouldn't say it, but if I had to poll right now, if I had to give my MVP award rankings, Josh Allen would probably be third on my list. And people will say, well, that's exactly why you don't get a vote. But I really don't care. And no, I'm not just looking at numbers. Like Lamar Jackson, like again, like we watched Lamar and Josh play this year. It wasn't close. In fact, it was an absolute thumping.
I mean, should Mahomes be in the MVP conversation?
No, I can't do that.
Right? You can't, but like he has 3,900 passing yards. He's played with all these injuries.
It's actually, hold on.
Travis Kelce's kind of washed this season at certain points. Pacheco out.
All right, to your point, like this is Patrick Mahomes. What he's doing right now is the exact reason Josh Allen shouldn't win the award. Because I agree, Martian, Mahomes shouldn't be in the conversation.
They're in the same boat, though. They are.
Josh is what? He's leading his team to a 12-3 record, right? Mahomes has one loss on the year. Just again wrapped up the number 1 seed with a week to go. He has a higher completion percentage, more passing yards, the same amount of passing touchdowns, and just 3 more interceptions than Josh Allen on the season.
But the loss to
Mahomes is nowhere in the conversation. I'm not saying he deserves
he's not even in it.
But Josh is because his team's 12-3 and he's doing more. Well, like that is the exact reason Josh Allen should be knocked down a peg or two in this conversation because it doesn't make sense to me. But look, I didn't expect to get this in depth into the AFC quarterback MVP conversation, but it is definitely something interesting as we wind into the playoffs.
Let me ask you one thing about the Chargers. How are you feeling about the Chargers, man? 2 big
wins. Well, they
definitely
they have made me look very dumb ever since I put the Denver Broncos into my top 10 2 weeks ago. Before that, was that a Thursday night football matchup where LA comes back, double-digit deficit in the first half, comes back and beats the Broncos, who are directly with them at the time in the AFC playoff picture. And then they come out and they thump a bad Patriots team. I'm not going to call it a great win, but they did exactly what they should have done and could do.
Yeah.
Justin Herbert, man, we're talking AFC quarterbacks. And I know he doesn't have the playoff pedigree yet. He doesn't have the resume. In fact, he's on the wrong side of history when it comes to playoff accolades and stuff. But we're talking about the here and now. He's playing amazing football heading into the playoffs, dude. With less.
This is what I wanted to ask you. We see what Keenan Allen is doing this year in Chicago. He was injured a lot of last year as well, right? He was beat up this year as well in Chicago. Maybe he's just not what he was before. And then you look at Mike Williams. This dude has been on like 3 to 4 teams since he left LA. So maybe he just wasn't that good.
Right.
Maybe Herbert was making these guys look better than what they are. I'm just saying, I'm not a Herbert guy. I don't know. We'll see. But he's balling out this year with a rookie wide receiver in Lad McConkey. You got Joshua Palmer out there. Just got J.K. Dobbins back. We'll see what they got. Obviously, love Derwin James. He had a hell of a game yesterday as well. He's a game record, but they're interesting, man. Like, say they go and add a T. Higgins is that hot name on the market this offseason, man. Somebody's gonna win out and get a quality wide receiver. And I feel like the Chargers should be in that sweepstakes, man.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Harbaugh has a lot to do with it as well. I think he's
I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
Former quarterback, correct? Like, and I see him very active within pregame routines with Herbert. I don't know if you looked at his stats, and if you know, then just let me know that you know. But if you had to guess, and Martian, if you had to guess, how many interceptions do you think Justin Herbert's thrown on the year? His numbers aren't astounding. Like, he's got 3,500 passing yards, 21 passing touchdowns. He's not, in the MVP conversation or anything like that.
My mind goes to 6, but I have looked at his numbers recently.
Yeah. How about you divide that by 2?
Interesting. So
he's got 3 picks on the year.
Taking care of the
football. Saying that could come in pretty handy.
Yeah.
If they're able to run the football and he's able to be effective in the postseason with Harbaugh at the helm, could come in handy at that point in time, man. 3 INTs on the year, Justin Herbert.
Ravens and Chargers first round matchup.
I'm saying I don't know.
It should be the Ravens. It should be the Harbaugh hole, right? It's interesting. The AFC is going to be interesting.
And you got the 2 probably most scrutinized AFC quarterbacks on the block there. You have Lamar and his playoff woes. You have Herbert and his playoff question marks. You get them on the same field.
Man, if you could get Josh and Joe, oh my goodness. If we can get the Bengals into the postseason, if we can just will them in. What the hell is that? What is this?
So do I, bro.
I don't know.
I got you.
Yeah. Same. 13 seconds, bro.
I was not expecting that, dude, at all, for that to pop up.
Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know why it's so funny. But
all right.
How about that last game last night?
Yeah,
How about the NFC West? What the fuck is going on out there with these road scores?
I know. And every high that the Rams have that like make me think a certain way about them and how they're probably not a team you want to see. It's like the offense. Is this the second straight week the offense hasn't scored like
a touchdown?
Kyren
Williams scored.
He got in last night. Yeah.
They scored one time.
Right. They scored.
And then was it against San Fran?
Yeah.
That they scored like 9-6 or something like that.
It was 12-9, something stupid.
12-9. And then the Seahawks on Thursday night, 6-3 against Chicago.
Yeah, Thursday Night Football has been an absolute dumpster fire as of the last few weeks. Someone like tweeted out as that game was going on, like there's going to come a point in time, like in the summer, like late July, where you're sitting there saying, man, I would do anything to watch football, any game right now, any player, just give me football. And then just think back to that game and think about it.
Yeah.
Do you want to watch anything? Do you want to watch any game right now? Because I don't need to watch that.
Yeah, I'm cool on it, man. I'm cool on it. If that's the product you're going to give me, I will say, how do you feel overall about like the Christmas Day games and stuff? Because I want to say this, it takes a lot of the steam out of the actual NFL Sunday.
Right.
And like my fantasy,
this Sunday fucking
for
sucks.
example. Like a lot of my fantasy leagues are already over. Like some of the matchups are already decided in reality, and it's Sunday's just starting. So it's like it's kind of lame in that sense for me.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely crushed. This week was very, very odd. I get it. It's the holidays, but I don't know why they do what they do come this time. Like you had
Yeah,
2 games on Christmas, then you had a Thursday night matchup, and then you put 3 games on Saturday. You have a Monday night game. Like we're sitting here today with a grand total of what, like 7 or 8 games,
yeah,
and you have one that is intriguing at 425.
yeah.
Now we're intrigued at one, but I'm watching Kenny Pickett and Cooper Rush sling the rock. So
Yeah, Kenny.
so with that said, man,
I think
I
that's
guess let's
entertaining
get
for
into
anyone else.
today's slate. We'll keep it a short show, and then we'll hop on over to
Yeah,
the Philadelphia YouTube channel and get into the Eagles Cowboys pregame show. But I'm looking around. Let's just start 1:00. All our attention is going to be on Eagles Cowboys. We'll break that down in about 30, 45 minutes. Everything else is garbage. Everything else is garbage at this 1:00 hour. I mean, Jets and Bills, if you looked before the season, you would have went, oh, that'll be a pretty important matchup. Not. And if you're the Bills, like, let me ask you this. I guess I can get some context in here. Do the Bills have the 2 seed locked up already?
I want to say no. I want to say they have to win this game to lock it up. Because
Right, because
technically, no,
Baltimore, well,
they would have.
oh, yeah. Because
Baltimore has the tiebreaker.
Baltimore beat the shit out of them. So if
Yeah,
Baltimore wins next week and Buffalo loses both,
yeah, they would have to lose both. But if
right,
they
right,
just
right.
win one, they wrap it up.
It's over. Okay. Because I was
So
going
they
to say,
do
at
need to
what
win.
point, like, do you think about resting Josh Allen and some of your starters? But obviously, you got to wrap that up first and foremost. So never mind to that question.
Panthers, Bucks. I mean,
Excuse me.
it's a big game for the Bucks.
Excuse me.
Like, is there any part of you that feels like it could be a letdown spot for the Bucks, just with the way the Panthers have kind of played teams down the stretch? Is there any chance?
No. No.
No. Yeah,
I
I
actually, if
feel
I'm
it.
being honest with you, I think it's time that the Panthers get like a dose of reality out of the last few weeks
A little bit
and
of an ass
get
whooping.
absolute, rock today.
Yeah, I feel
So
that.
I do think that you got the 3-12 Titans versus the 3-12 Jags, the Colts at the Giants, the
Colts
Raiders
get
at
it
the
done?
Saints. My fucking God. The Colts, they better hope they do. By the way,
Better.
Giants 0-8 at home this year. They lose today, which they are 7.5-point underdogs. They are going to lose all 9 home games this year.
They're trying to
Winless.
lose, right?
You would assume so. 2-13. I would fucking hope so if you're them.
Somebody said it was a funny tweet. I can't remember who tweeted it out, but basically, if the Eagles win today, Giants lose today, and then they play next week, the Eagles lose to them and just ruin their draft pick. It'll just be a shit off.
That would be awesome. To
next
Martian's
week, so.
point, yes. Washington has to win out. The Eagles have to lose out. And then they'd be tied, and whatever the tiebreaker is, maybe they'd own it. I don't know.
Other things that have
Put it
to
this
happen
way.
between common opponents.
Put it this way. The Eagles win today or win next week.
Yeah.
They are the NFC East champs, and they ultimately, I believe, are the number 2 seed regardless, right? Who am I missing behind us? The South, no. And the West, no. So, there's no chance either of the other 2 divisions can catch them. So, at some point, they are going to lock up the 2 seed.
Did Doug do this? I feel like he did blow one of these opportunities, man.
Well, not in the way you're thinking about. He lost to Washington on purpose, and it kept Washington out of the playoffs. Or not Washington, it kept the Giants out. Yeah, it kept the Giants out of the playoffs, because I remember like Sterling Shepard and them were like tweeting during the game how fucking crazy it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
okay. I know what you mean.
He didn't lose to like Washington to screw Washington out of a pick. He lost to Washington on Sunday Night Football pretty obviously on
Yeah,
purpose, and it kept the Giants out of the postseason.
out of the postseason. Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, it
So that
is.
was
It's
pretty funny.
business.
Yeah. But all right, let's get to the
4
let's
PM.
get to the 4 o'clock hour. You got the Dolphins, Browns, snoozer. And then you have Sunday Night Football, Packers, Vikings, man. This is the game. And as Eagles fans, hopefully we can win. We can wrap up the 2 seed at a minimum and then root for the Green Bay Packers to beat the Vikings, not only because it will keep the Packers out of the 7 seed, not that that's, that I need that to happen, but it is a benefit for us, but also it would keep the Eagles' dream to a 1 seed alive, because if the Packers walk into Minnesota today and win this game, the Eagles win next week against the Giants at home, and the Vikings beat the Lions, the Philadelphia Eagles are the number 1 seed in the NFC. So that is definitely a game we're going to keep an eye on. Minnesota, 1-point favorite at home, brother.
Yeah. It's
Is that
interesting, man.
is that making you lean towards Green Bay?
Um, it's funny you asked that, because in the first matchup, and I do believe Minnesota won that one, in Green Bay, by the way. I did favor Green Bay in that one, and I'm doing it again today, man. I think the Green Bay Packers are better than the Minnesota Vikings. I have faith that Jordan Love is better than Sam Darnold. I do think the pedigree that the Green Bay Packers are working with is a little bit stronger than what the Vikings are working with, and what I'm talking about is that ground game with Josh Jacobs, right, leading the way. I trust him a lot more. I trust their offensive line a lot more than I trust Minnesota's at the end of the day. And I do trust Jordan Love more than I trust Sam Darnold. So when I look at that from that perspective, I tend to lean more towards Green Bay, even offensively, going into the postseason, especially when you get into games that might be outdoors. That being said, looking at the defensive side of things, I think once again, Green Bay has a pretty sturdy defense. I think you could argue which one of these defenses are better, but I would probably side with Green Bay there as well. So they just got to put it all on the field today. We need to see it,
Yeah.
obviously. If they lose both to Minnesota, the Minnesota is the better team for sure. So they need to go out here and win today. And I think it just makes everything spicier, man. I think it makes sense for Green Bay to go out there and get a W and just shake everything up in the NFC. Very similar to what their Commanders did last week, man. They shook everything up. They opened the door for some other teams to get up into the 2 and the 1 seeds in the NFC. So I think we could see another shake up there. And then you get the Monday Night Football, man. The Niners are out of it, but who knows? Maybe they could play spoiler a little bit. But it starts with the Packers, though. They can pick things up this afternoon.
And as you're talking through that, it's funny because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about it from a Minnesota perspective, because they're the team that we have kind of just shoved down and down and down, no matter how impressive of a win
May not
they've
be
gotten
fair.
week in and week out. And it might not totally be fair this year. And I was going to sit here and say, if they win this one, right, this would be like a coming to the light moment for me when it comes to this Minnesota team. And I'll believe in them come January. But then I go back and what you mentioned about losing both if you're Green Bay. Well, if you're the Packers and you lose this matchup, which would obviously mean Minnesota wins, which I thought would be a huge deal, at that point in time, the Packers will have lost to the Eagles, both to the Vikings, and both to the Lions, with their biggest win being a walk-off field goal at home against the Houston Texans, probably. I mean, they kicked the shit out of the Niners with no Purdy and no Nick Bosa and everybody else.
Sounds like fraud.
They have they have a win in Seattle. They have a win in LA versus the Rams. They're good wins. Those are fine wins. And the Texans win is a fine win. They're all in the playoff hunt or a playoff team at this point. But that's it. You've beaten the Cardinals. You've beaten the Jags. You've beaten the Bears. You've beaten the Colts. You've beaten the Titans. You've beaten the Saints. You will have lost to the Eagles, the Vikings, and the Lions, and will be 0-5 against those teams. So what I'm trying to say is, while I think it would still be a very valuable win for the Vikings, and I can't just keep pushing them down and not believing in them at that point, it's not this huge win. Like, I'm seeing a lot of tweets from people when the Packers walked into Seattle and beat the shit out of them. People are like, the Packers are legit.
Yeah.
Maybe. But if they
Maybe.
lose today, they are.
I think they have a good pedigree, but you make a great case for them being frauds. And this game is a much bigger game for Green Bay than it is Minnesota, quite honestly, from my perspective. Now that you kind of present it that way, you look back to their first matchup, man. Green Bay lost that by 2 points. The difference in the game, both quarterbacks pretty much balled out. Jordan Love had 4 passing touchdowns in this game, over 300 passing yards. Darnold had 275, 3 passing touchdowns, 1 interception. The difference was Jordan Love with 3 interceptions in this game against that Minnesota defense, turning the ball over.
That was
man.
the game. I think we bet on the Packers in this game. They went down like 28-0.
Yeah, we did bet on that. Yep. And Jordan Love just kept on giving it up.
Yep.
So there's two ways this game could go. Jordan Love could prove that he just struggles against that Brian Flores-led Minnesota defense, or he can have a bounce back game, right? He can look back at that game and be like, man, if I just don't throw 2 of those interceptions, or maybe even 1 of those interceptions, we might or probably win this game against Minnesota.
They also had like 2 fumbles in this game. I think they turned the ball over 4 or 5 times total as a team. So it was disgusting.
We need to be better than that.
I only bring that up, man, because like if we're gonna sit here and talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers in that light, right?
And the Vikings, even.
And the Vikings in that light, who actually have pretty big wins on the year.
They do.
Look, why like Green Bay just can't get a pass, right? Why? Because because Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur are like we like them more. They're fun. They're whatever. Like, no, you lose today. You have maybe a good win or 2 on your resume this year, maybe. So definitely something to keep an eye on. But like I said, not only as an Eagles fan am I pulling for the Packers, which means I'm going to lay money on the Packers more than likely. That 1-point spread's very intriguing to me because this is a home game for Minnesota.
Yeah.
And even though it's a very, very close game, normally the home team's going to get 3.
At least, right?
3
that usually means it's even.
Right. And so you're telling me 1 in Minnesota makes me really want to lean Green Bay's way in this one. Yeah.
It just feels right, man. It feels like a game that Green Bay needs more than the Minnesota Vikings. This is a big prove it game, man. Both ways, honestly. Because if the Vikings do handle Green Bay in this situation where we can agree that Green Bay needs this game a little bit more, even to solidify their spot in the postseason, like if you're Green Bay, do you want to come to Philadelphia in the first round? Like as much as we may not want to play them versus like the Commanders, I don't think they want to come to Philadelphia either. They probably rather go to the 3 seed
instead of playing the Falcons or the Rams or something like that.
Right. So the Packers really do need this one more. But if the Vikings shut them out, then that like we've already said, that means the Vikings are definitively better than the Packers at this point. So we'll see, man. Jordan Love comes out like that. That is interesting, man, because I sit here and I say that so boldly that I trust Jordan Love for whatever reason more than Sam Darnold. But Sam Darnold is having a better season.
Yeah.
Easily.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt, a better season. So maybe I've been unfair to Sam Darnold. I don't know. The playoffs will tell all truths. That's really what we got to wait for. So this, they Sam Darnold could show out again today and then lay an egg in the postseason. So the postseason really does tell all. The pressure mounts up. But this is a big game, man.
We got someone going to the Minnesota.
Nice.
Or maybe he's going to the Minnesota game, or maybe he's talking about going to the Eagles game, and also he's rooting for the Packers later. Don't know. Let me know.
Let us know.
Make sure to hit that subscribe
button.
Either way. Last game I guess we could talk about, man, before we get out of here and talk some birds. Falcons Commanders Sunday Night Football. It does have relevance to the Eagles as well. Both NFC playoff picture teams. You have the Commanders, who are looking more and more likely like they are going to be the Eagles' first round matchup. Just beat us last week in that fashion. And then you have Michael Penix trying to lead this team that he took over last week for Kirk Cousins, trying to win another game. And I think this would solidify the division for Atlanta. It might not. They're 8-7. What are the Bucs? The Bucks are also
They
8-7, so it would not solidify it with a win tonight, but they do hold the tiebreaker over Tampa
they
Bay, right? They
do.
beat them
They've beaten
twice.
Tampa twice.
Right.
Didn't read
So
that.
right. So I
Who
think
does
Tampa Bay
Tampa
needs to
play?
win both and Atlanta needs to win out. So or Atlanta needs to win one. So yeah, I think if Atlanta wins, they could be in. Don't take my word for gospel.
Tampa plays New Orleans next week, so that's why
Right.
it looks like Tampa's going to
Right.
make
It's
it.
huge. It's
So
huge.
this is a big game for Atlanta tonight. To your point, and I'm just wondering who does Atlanta play if they do somehow beat the Commanders tonight? Because I do think the Commanders are a better team than the Atlanta Falcons at the end of the day. I
The
know I've shit
Atlanta
on the
play
Commanders
the
a little bit.
Panthers at home next week.
They play the Panthers. So if they get this W, I don't know. It's interesting.
I'll tell you what. I told you
It's
I
a
was
huge
being
game.
petty earlier on in the week, and I was being spiteful. I still am.
Yeah.
I am a Falcon fan tonight,
Oh
brother.
yeah, I'm rooting for the Falcons.
Not only for all those reasons, right? It keeps Baker and Mike Evans and the Bucks out of the postseason, and it gets Michael Penix and the Falcons in the postseason, and it hurts the Commanders' chance of flopping with the Packers for the 7 and 6 seeds, which all benefit the Eagles, but also like just one of these. Like all that noise. Like go ahead, turn around and lose to Michael Penix on your home turf tonight. After
Be
you puffed
interesting.
your chest out for beating Kenny Pickett in the final 6 seconds. Go lose that game. And do you want to know how delusional this fan base is, man? This happens all the time with us. Like when we play these new cities that no one really gives a shit about sometimes. I know they're in our division, but it's the Cowboys and it's the Giants above them. Here's the issue. What's he say? Penix might be the truth. Oh, that's true. The issue with this fan base is I saw someone tweet after they beat us last week in all caps with like some stupid video about how their destiny is in their own control. If they win out, they just got to win the next 2 and they're the NFC East champions and number 2. Like this is how stupid some of this fan base is. And that's not a knock at Mrs. Rems. That's not a knock at Pastor Rems, but the rest of your fan base is pretty stupid because they won that game in the final 6 seconds and then thought, "Oh man, we're going to win the division." I don't like this team.
They might, Dylan.
I find like we've done this. Like obviously New York and Dallas are different, right? Boston in the NBA, but like I found myself like with the Phillies in the past when it comes to like the Arizona Diamondbacks fan base, when the Sixers in the past with the Toronto Raptors, like just fan bases you don't have much interaction with, and then your teams get to play head to head, and now out of the woodwork on social media come these annoying troll-like people that are just stupid. And that's how I feel about the fans down in DC.
I know you had to get that off your chest, man.
Look at that team, dude.
I don't think the Falcons are winning tonight, but we'll see, man. We'll see. Like Ram said, if Penix Jr. is the truth, if he can come out there and be dynamic with Bijan Robinson, use Drake London, get Kyle Pitts. Maybe Kyle Pitts just sucks, but if he could go out there and use his legs, make some plays, who knows? But I do think the Commanders are going to get the W. I think they're a little bit more well-rounded as a team than the Atlanta Falcons right now.
Yeah,
but
I do agree. Just sucks.
I feel you though. I definitely will be rooting for the Atlanta Falcons. I won't lie to you. I was thinking about laying the Commanders -3.5, but now that you say that, I would rather not. Yeah, I'd rather not.
What's that total of that game?
46.5.
I kind of like the over. I think both teams are going to try to sling it. So, and
Yeah.
like D-Rab said, Michael Penix, Jaden Daniels could be in for a little bit of a shootout on national television. But these nationally televised games have just given us the big old bird the last couple of weeks when we think we're going to score points and have some fun.
Because if I get a 12-6 type of shit with these two teams, man, I'm going to be really suspect of how real this shit is, man.
With that said, brother, let's get on out of here. Let's hop on over to the other channel, the DSM Philadelphia YouTube channel. So, guys, you can catch us over there. Make sure to subscribe there. Follow us on Twitter at DSM_media. We're going to be breaking down the Eagles-Cowboys game No Jalen Hurts, no Dak Prescott, no CeeDee Lamb, rain, kind of warm, weird day. Weird day is probably going to mean we're in for some weird football, but hey, we're going to talk about it. We're going to give you guys our best bets, our game predictions, and our standout stars, and that and much, much more in a few moments. For myself,
Yes,
for
sir.
Scotty, don't forget to subscribe here on the Turf Talk channel. Peace out, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Peace.